Welcome to Brokusatsu, two brothers' exploration of tokusatsu shows and associated media. I'm Harry.
I'm Sam, and I apologize for spamming the various Tokusatsu Facebook groups to try and get our listenership above myself, my brother, and our mother.
It's kind of the early days of a podcast, and we're not coming into this famous from anything else. We're no Christopher Sims starting something, so you get an established audience at the start. So right now we have, as far as I can estimate, 3 listeners.
Yes. Me, Harry, and probably our mom. Actually, probably not our mom, now that I think about it. I think she might have listened to one episode of this, and then she'll lie and tell us that she listened to the rest from here on in.
I know our dad listened to one episode because he was listening to it when we tried to record an episode, and that was a brain-melting experience. Our mom almost assuredly would listen to this if she could figure out the highly technical manner of following the links, but I'm going to say she probably didn't. Our sister, no, she didn't bother. So I think there's a good chance we have at least a couple non-family member listeners. So
My God.
if you're listening to this, dear God, tell somebody else. You know what? Let's do this pyramid scheme style. If you can semi-accurately claim that you've added 2 listeners to the listenership at this point, you can guest on an episode. I'll let that happen. We'll figure it out.
Now, are we, closing that loop to, the first person who does it, or just leaving it completely open-ended?
We'll say first come, first serve on that, and then that number, it's going to increase exponentially the more it becomes of a big deal.
Wonderful. Okay. I like this. We're writing checks that our future selves may or may not have to cash.
Well, that's how you made me make the fucking Facebook page, and that's how 2 whole people visit it, you and me.
Alright. Should we get on to the episode for this week?
What if one of us, I don't want to say murdered the president, but, did something super famous, and then just because it was much out of the news, and they have a podcast where they talk about obscure Japanese television shows, and then 1 week our viewership goes up to, 1 million.
Yes, we're just kind of, laying down traps for, future news reporters, for when something inevitably horrible happens to us or our family, my God, the clues were here all along.
We're just waiting to step on that landmine of fame.
Alright, let's get on to the episode.
Today, we are reviewing episodes 9 and 10 of Kamen Rider Double, The Trembling Before S.
And it has taken me this long to realize that all the episode titles have a letter in it.
Over the course of the show, they'll have every letter in it.
Is W the last letter?
W was the first episode.
Well, fuck. Okay, what's the last letter? Wait, is that a spoiler?
I mean, they don't do it in order. They start it with W.
Well, I mean, are they going to repeat W? Would it be... I mean, that would kind of work. W is the first, W is the last.
I will say the last episode is not W.
Ooh. Well. Let the speculation begin.
Yeah, and they do Z for the movie.
So, yeah. The episode here...
Episode 9. I saw the main detective.
The episode begins with Akiko wearing the Kamen Rider belt. Would that work? Is this belt genetically linked to Shitaro and Philip, or would it actually work if she actually put in the USB sticks?
I don't know. A lot of other Kamen Rider belts get locked to the user at the start of the show, that happened in O's, and it happens to most of the drivers in Gaim, for example. But in this one, I'm not sure. I mean, I do think the other end is probably linked to Philip because he's the special boy with his special boy powers. I think there's a decent chance that Akiko could probably transform and do a decent job. Well, I mean, she'd have to probably do some training, but whatever.
Would she? I mean, we've seen Shitaro.
Maybe Shitaro's special ability is just being able to be bossed around by Philip.
His special ability is that half of his mind is blank, and so he's the perfect partner.
He's the ultimate sub.
Alright.
Good, we're starting off good.
Speaking of Shitaro... he starts the episode opening up a Amazon package full of detective novels.
That he bought with embezzled funds from the company.
Yep. I mean, what kind of expenses do they really have? Akiko owns the building that they're in, or technically I guess her father does, because they still haven't told her that he's dead.
Yeah, she still does not know, so she's just managing the bills, and yeah, I mean, they gotta pay for whatever utilities there are in Futo City.
Which can't be high.
I'm not sure. Like, when electricity is probably getting knocked down every other week by rogue dopants taking out the power grid.
It's either super cheap and super sporadic or super expensive. And, well, I mean, hey, now that we think about it, like a couple episodes ago, the local politician, her big thing was getting a sustainable, renewable energy source in town. So the city council is aware of the problems with the infrastructure in the city.
But she got spat at by Anomalo Harris, and then she decided to take her daughter home.
So after a few minutes of goofing around, a half dozen grieving families show up. Like, I wasn't clear if they went to the detectives before they went to the police.
They specifically say the police won't take them seriously.
Yeah, the police in this town kind of suck. I think I'm getting a new theory on what's going on with the evil family here. They're delegitimizing the police department, they're delegitimizing, like, the city council, they're tearing down the infrastructure, they're just taking pot shots at all the public works in the town. They might be hyper-libertarians. These might be the most Ayn Rand villains in Kamen Rider history, just turning themselves into Supermen so they can seize control of society and the means of production for themselves.
I mean, it's not the craziest theory. I can't really comment on it, but
Ah, fine. But anyway, it turns out that all these families that have shown up, they're looking for a half dozen missing famous pastry chefs.
then as we exit the cold open, there's a shot of a kind of man covered in this weird goo trying to crawl up some stairs.
It is very The Thing.
So Shotaro doesn't want the case because sweets aren't super hard boiled, and Japan has weird gender norms about sweets.
But they do need the money, so they take the case.
Yeah, Akiko's the good boss, pointing out that they'll actually get paid for doing this, so goddammit, they're gonna do it.
Yeah, so Shotaro meets with the friendly police officers, Back Scratcher Cop and Not Back Scratcher Cop, and I kind of wrote this down verbatim, like something that the police say to Shotaro as about their investigation into the missing persons. There's one place we haven't looked into yet, the place Asakawa was last seen.
Yeah, they've done a very thorough job of searching the city, except for the last known location. Great police work there.
Yes, they've literally looked everywhere else except for the one place that he was seen last.
And that place was the Sonozaki estate. Dun dun dun.
Yep. Finally, we are getting Kamen Rider involved with the Sonozaki family.
The cops showed up and tried to investigate, but were kicked out. And that's where it ended, because the cops in this town are kind of pushovers.
Yeah, really, really awful police officers in the city. Like, hey, this is the last place that 5 people went missing. Can we go on? Oh, nope, you won't let us. Fine. Okay, case is closed. Case is unsolvable.
You're rich, I guess we gotta go. Oh. Yeah, they specifically say that Ryubi, the very old man, is very terrifying.
Yeah, like, it's the last known location for 5 missing people, and the owner is known to be terrifying. These are the worst cops ever.
After a minute, Philip also says that the other 4 missing people were all guests at the manor shortly before they were abducted.
So they all went missing at the exact same location. Like, I could put this together from like 10,000 miles away.
Philip also has kind of a minor reaction to the Sonozaki name, just because it's very plot relevant and that might be affecting him.
And Akiko decides to go undercover at the Sonozaki Manor.
She gets a job as a maid there, and we are introduced to her parkouring around, chasing around Mick the cat, and feeding it a weird bowl of food. And then we meet this. Who is this mysterious figure that shows up to critique Akiko, Sam? Can you recognize her?
It might be Princess Wakana.
It's Wakana. And Akiko is a huge fan from the radio show. She's just famous with everybody.
So we see Akiko versus Mick, Akiko versus Wakana. Like, all the villains are meeting all the heroes this episode.
Yeah, under the weirdest pretenses possible.
Also, Akiko appears to be using her real name at the manor for going undercover, which is not a great look.
I mean, I guess it saves you the trouble of having to come up with a false identity.
She's going undercover. Come on, put in some effort here.
Akiko, she's a good girl, but she's not traditionally competent, let's say, as is shown in this episode. She gets super chewed out by the head maid for doing such terrible things as behaving like a person and talking to the, people that they're working for. She is told that at this house they have a strict see no evil, speak no evil, hear no evil policy. That there's many things you may find out and see, but you can't talk about it to anyone except the closest people in your lives.
Yeah, except specifically their friends and family. They're allowed to talk to them about the stuff that they see.
It's a real no snitching policy for a supervillain house, which I guess is necessary.
I gotta say, very trusting of the Sanizakis to just be like, yeah, maids help, just don't talk about us turning into monsters, and we'll be chill.
Do you remember that amazing episode of Fear Effect? Editor's note, I was thinking of the show Scare Tactics, and I get some details wrong. But this is a podcast about that, so screw it.
No.
So, I mean, just some background, I guess. Back when reality TV was a lot younger, there was a show that lasted, I think, for just one season before they realized it was super litigious. Somebody would sign up a friend of theirs to be unintentionally placed into the middle of a horror movie. So they would do things where, like, they would be at a place and then a monster would show up and break into a room, or something, they'd be driving around and the car would break down and strange lights would start flashing and people would come up and, like, run around the car and people would, freak out and scream and stuff like that.
Yes, many of the episodes ended with the target just on the ground in tears, like traumatized for the rest of their lives.
But there was this one amazing episode that I remember that super reminded me at this point, where there was basically a girl who was hired to be, like, kind of a maid or just like a cook or a worker at this strange rich guy's house. And the strange rich guy, the whole thing was that he started acting creepier and creepier, like yelling at walls and things like that. And another person there who was an actress said that, oh, I ate some food and now I feel like I'm getting drugged. And the special thing about this girl is that she was clearly scared, but she was the one who's going to live through the horror movie. She was like, okay, yeah, don't drink that food. I'm going to look around for a phone or something like that. We're going to get out here. When she was kind of countered by the supervillain guy, and he had clearly trapped someone in, like, bandages and plaster. They were, like, mummified alive and trying to get out. She was, like, no-selling the whole experience, like, putting face on, and, like, she was half a second from, like, either bolting out of the room or breaking something in half and stabbing the man, but she was just entirely calm and just working with it and just dealing with the situation like you'd have to. And
or maybe she was just trying to keep her job. It is a really shitty job market out there right now.
Yeah, it was in that show where so often they had to break early because the guy was clearly going to have a heart attack or something. She went, like, so far deep into the plot that she was a survivor, man.
I do also want to point out, a lot of those Fear Factor jobs, the people were lured on specifically because it was jobs. So they weren't just targeting random, like, strangers. They weren't just targeting random people off the street. They were specifically targeting people who needed work and needed to stay on a job site in order to get paid and live their lives.
A weird extra level of class warfare is now added to the whole experience. That's a good point. Back to Kamen Rider. Akiko. Hey, there's some class warfare here,
Yep.
Considering how little the Sonozaki seem to fucking care that there's, like, serial killers stalking around their house. Akiko is on a stealth mission. She's taking notes on everybody.
Yes, and one of the daughters of the pastry chefs is on site, and the daughter is a noted pastry chef herself. In fact, she is the 6th best pastry chef in the city, which will come up.
Shotaro learned that Akiko is on a stealth mission, so he showed up at the estate, and at the gates, he's watching the manor, and he's hit by a kind of pulse of something coming from it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a vision or some kind of, like, because he's a Kamen Rider, does he have any kind of ESP, sensory perception going on?
He kind of figures out that there's something up with this place.
Yeah, he ascends in the beetle drone to shadow Akiko around, and then he is confronted by the drug dealer.
Oh yeah, Kirihiko. He just grabs him from behind, grabs him with Goswal, says, "Are you a stalker of Wakanda?" Because apparently she has to deal with lots of crazy fans.
Mm-hmm. She is a public figure.
Is that now, actually? That I had that happening later.
Oh, yeah, that is a little bit later.
I feel, yeah, you skip a couple scenes. There's a mean bald guy in the kitchen who Akiko thinks is suspicious. There's also some melting walls, which Akiko doesn't notice, which are equally suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scene where, Shotaro and Akiko are yelling through the fence about if this is a terrible idea or not.
We go back to Philip at this point, and he has a bit of a flashback to the night where Akiko's father died.
The night it all began, or they're called in Japan, begins night.
I gotta wonder, flashing back now that we know about Philip's behavior during transformations, what happened to Philip's body during that first day? Like, we see Kamen Rider like jumping out of a burning building. I don't recall him carrying Philip.
There's a lot that happens. It actually. So, I've decided, because they go into some real specifics on this, and also it's relevant for later episode. It's part of one of the movies. It happens at a specific point in the storyline of the show, and I think we'll watch it for the podcast.
Okay.
Either as, depending on the length, we'll either do it as part of the one for the relevant episode, or maybe just an episode on its own. But yeah, there is a Begins Night movie, and then a little bit of extra stuff that's unfortunately tied in with Kamen Rider Decade. So you're going to see some stuff that answers some questions, and then some stuff that makes no goddamn sense.
Great. I'm just the passenger here. I'm just here to be the idiot.
What we learn now, anyways, is that Philip kind of wants to tell Akiko the origin story, but Shotaro is hesitant because he blames himself for the chief's death.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little understandable that he's trying to get Akiko to not do this whole investigation thing if you put in those terms. But he's still kind of a, jerk about it.
Yeah. It is also one of those unfortunate, like, social situations where, you should tell someone something, like, right away, but then you delay, and the more you delay, the worse it is. So it's just piling and piling on Shotaro's subconscious.
Remember when you got cancer and your first thing you said to Ellen was, "How do we not tell Mom?"
Hey, I stand by that reaction. Things would have gone a lot smoother if Mom hadn't known.
You could have sold it, man. Sonozaki family is eating some meals together. Ryubi realizes that, oh, this is some nice tea, and these sweets are good. Who made these sweets? And Akiko, learning from her thing earlier of, we have to be quiet and not interact with the Sonozakis, she runs into the room, screams that she knows who it was, goes, grabs pastry chef, and drags her in.
Yeah, Akiko really needs to turn it down a notch. But now we get the scene where Shotaro is confronted by Kirihiko, the drug dealer. And he is at the gate. Kirihiko accuses Shotaro of being a stalker for Princess Wakanda.
Kirihiko starts to explain to him that he loves this town, and he's this close to becoming part of the royalty that rules it.
Yeah, Kirihiko kind of goes into a backstory dive. Like, we cut away, and then we cut back, and he's still explaining his backstory to Shotaro.
He's giving a whole monologue off screen.
At that point, we finally see the Candy Monster.
The daughter was proud to be compared to her dad, but unfortunately that also makes her a target. And a goo tentacle comes out of the wall and grabs her.
Yes, Shotaro turns into Kamen Rider, jumps in, pulls her away from the beast, who forms into... I mean, it's a dildo, right? Like, the monster really looks like a dildo.
I was drinking water, damn it. It's not that much of a dildo.
Are you sure? It's very, very conical and plastic, Harry. Also, it kind of gets covered with, like, sticky white buttercream frosting all the time.
I kind of see. Yeah, it is. Certain parts of it are ribbed for her pleasure, like the arm and some of the specks. Yeah, okay, it's a dildo. As soon as fighting the dildo monster happens, then Anaska decides, oh, I gotta jump in on this, and he joins in the fight.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Kamen Rider versus Anaska.
There's some scenes where Double gets trapped in like some sticky, solidifying substances and has to break it apart with sonic attacks from the bat.
And then the other evil daughter is about to transform into Taboo DuPont when the evil father shows up and just kind of like frags the entire scene.
Yeah, he just walks into a room, says, "It's time to get these crazy kids off my lawn," and transforms into the Terror DuPont. And that's the episode break. So Ed, we enter into the Ace Detective's daughter.
We begin with Kamen Rider versus Nazca versus Candy Monster.
There's no teams; they're all just punching each other.
Yeah, and they're kind of being surrounded by this dark, like, antimatter-esque substance where they cannot touch it lest they die. They escape, and Shotaro runs away.
Philip says that we may have just encountered one of the major players behind this whole conspiracy, because he can recognize the final boss when he sees one.
Yeah, pretty easy to recognize in this particular case. Akiko talks to the daughter at this point, who is determined to continue working at the evil households to continue searching for her dad. Like, everyone in this place has just the best work ethic. The new pastry chef is not quitting. None of the staff, none of the maids, none of the help are quitting. These people really love their jobs.
I think there's a chance that the Sonozaki family just pays like fucking gangbusters.
And there's also that possibility as well. If I was paid enough money, I would hold some pretty dark secrets for a boss.
They're superpowered drug dealers. I doubt they have problems with cash flow.
Yep.
There's a brief family meeting. They know that there's a DuPont in the staff, but Ruby figures out that, nobody who works here other than the people in this room really knows about our whole conspiracy, so we don't really need to worry about that being revealed. So I guess we could just kind of deal with it.
They're pretty chill about a monster being on their site, especially one they don't know about. Like, did Kirihiko sell this memory and just forget about it, or how many dealers are there in town?
There's a few. Kirihiko seems like the kind of guy who would remember selling this memory, so I gotta assume it's someone else. And if this went on a bit longer, I think there's a good chance they will have gone through the records and dealt with this, but at this point, it's not actually a big enough deal for them to bother. What is of concern is that Psycho, she is very interested on getting her hands on Double before her father does. Intrigue.
There is a heart-to-heart scene now where Akiko and Shitaro are talking at a lake about the importance of just protecting your clients when you're a detective, the importance of being a detective, memories of her father that really just drives that knife into Shitaro's heart.
Yeah, she really misses her dad because he never spent much time with her. He was always busy with his cases, and so that's why she showed up, and she's trying extra hard because, doing the same stuff as her father is something she could do to kind of try to feel closer to him. Mm-hmm. And Shitaro just starts to try to confess that he's actually dead, it's my fault, and he turns around and she has ran off.
Yep. We then jump to the patriarch of Evil Family as he is pacing around his museum.
Akiko kind of talks with him to set up a special event, and Shitaro's shadowing him when he starts to notice that he's standing in front of a Megba exhibit. Mm-hmm. But then off to the side is a T-Rex exhibit and an Anomalocaris exhibit. And every exhibit here directly is linked to a dopant that he has fought, and some gears start turning in his mind.
Cut to a scene where the Evil Family and all their staff are sitting down for a lovely-looking dinner. And Akiko begins her parlor scene, where she gets to proclaim who is guilty, who committed the murder, in front of everyone.
And she accuses the fat maid.
Yes.
Because she's fat.
That's some hardcore body shaming there, Akiko.
So yeah, terrible in real life. In the context of the writing of a toku show, I mean, it probably was a pretty good bet, I'm not gonna lie.
Maybe that was like the first draft. And then they were like, no, that's too obvious. Clearly the fat person is the evil one.
No, yeah. Then in a cool kind of split action photography scene, some facts are revealed, and it's shown that the actual perpetrator is a critic of sweets. It's the other maid.
Yes, the other maid who moonlights as a food critic for a local magazine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She screams that she's going to murder Akiko for feeding her the terrible sweets she made for this event, and transforms. Everyone runs out of the room except for the supervillain family, who just kind of sit there and sip coffee because they don't care.
Yep, they're quite amused. Although Kirihiko and Psycho do break away to go and chase Kamen Rider shortly.
Philip is pissed because they're doing a minor investigation and suddenly they're fighting all of the final bosses. This is bullshit.
Mm-hmm. It's also something they should probably pick up on, that, this mansion full of, the wealthiest person in town that everyone is terrified of somehow seems to have all the final bosses in it.
He also runs a museum that has, clear links to all of the Gaia memories that have been running around the city.
Not great detectives, these guys.
Well, I think this is the episode where they start to figure a lot of those things out, and, they're dealing with something else right now, but who knows?
Mm-hmm. So the sweets monster swallows Akiko and the daughter and bounces away as Kamen Rider fights the Terror DuPont and the Taboo DuPont and the Nazca DuPont.
It's going real bad for him until he hits them both with the goddamn tank and then gets on a rocket bike and runs away.
Yep. As he's running away, Kirihiko is chasing after him, and Kamen Rider just kind of guns him down again. He is very big on shooting that guy.
I'll say this for Kamen Rider Double. When it comes to fights, he is very pragmatic.
Mm-hmm.
Psycho freaks out a little bit at this and starts fucking beating on Nazca. Their relationship is starting to break down a little bit, sad to say.
Mm-hmm. We cut to a scene where the Candy DuPont is menacing Akiko and the rest of the pastry chefs. She is going to make the pastry chefs work for her for the rest of their lives, just making delicious, delicious sweets. And, I feel that. I can see where she's going. They're all tied up with buttercream frosting. Pastry chefs undone by it, as so many before them have been. But yeah, Kamen Rider shows up, there's a fight, he beats her.
He put a tracer in Akiko, which seems like a reasonable precaution. Like, if you have tracers and are a group of private detectives, everybody should just have one of them at all times.
Pretty much. They should just be surgically implanted at a certain point.
Yeah, and as the fight is concluded, Akiko does manage to impress Shotaro very briefly by kind of defending her client in a dramatic way.
And as the episode is closing, we see the evil family talking shit about Kirihiko, who is then shown in the shower with a glorious, gratuitous butt shot.
Yeah, and also some nice bruises. This spousal abuse is happening here.
Does it count as spousal abuse if they're both transformed into monsters at the time? Like, doesn't that kind of count as, like, a couple that, like, studies Taekwondo together, and so they, they're punching, they're kicking, but they know that it's, like, just a part of that?
This wasn't, like, a training injury. You saw Psycho. She was just fucking beating on Nazca. She was pissed. This is not a healthy thing happening.
Still, I mean, if you're transformed into monsters, I kind of feel like it's a safe word situation where anything goes until you say the word.
The safe word is dropping your transformation?
Yeah, I mean, there are worse safe words.
I guess.
But yeah, that is the episode.
Lots of interesting stuff here. So, Sam, I'm guessing the speculation corner is going to be nice and meaty for you?
Oh, not really. I'm just wondering, like, so the evil family, it's clear where they're getting, like, some of the memories. They're running a museum. They have a T-Rex skeleton. They have the ancient lobster that they're pulling DNA from, presumably. But they're also getting sweet monsters and, like, gambling probability monsters. So I'm a little unclear exactly on where they're pulling their various creatures from. Like, some of them are quite clear, some of them are a little esoteric.
There's a specific answer to that, and I can't tell you, so...
Well, okay, that was my speculation for the month. Or for the week, whatever. Is this weekly?
Yeah, yes, it's weekly. God damn it.
Oh, you haven't come up with yours yet, have you?
Hold on. So, then as kind of a more general question, now I know you've worked in local politics, so this may be something with a very interesting or very secret and you can't give an answer, but what's kind of the sketchiest job you've ever had to work?
Okay, so definitely political campaigns fall under the sketchiest job. I don't think they're the sketchiest, though. The weirdest things I've ever done for a paycheck is probably the time I worked as a civilian contractor for the military, pretending to be a detainee at Guantanamo Bay so that soldiers could practice moving me from facility to facility.
Oh, this is a good story, yeah.
Yeah, like there's a lot of stuff that I probably still can't legally talk about for that, but, I got to see, the dark inside of a lot of jail cells, and I got a good paycheck for it.
You specifically made some guards cry, and you were very proud of that, if I remember.
Oh, yeah. I also, I got to spend a couple months just working on getting out of handcuffs. If I'm ever in the back of a police car, I know how to get out of those cuffs, real good.
That is a valuable life skill.
It is.
As for me, I haven't had too many jobs. There was some of the political campaigns I worked for you, although I generally did kind of forward-facing stuff that you can generally talk about.
Well, I mean, you have worked for politicians that have since been arrested.
Oh yeah, I've worked for politicians that have gone down on major finance charges, but at the time they were very reputable seeming.
Yes, in theory, they were perfectly normal jobs.
But yeah, I worked for a 7-Eleven once, and there's no way that can't be sketchy.
Oh yeah.
It's like, you come in for training, and instead of training, they just put you behind the counter for 8 hours, and when it hits midnight, a lady who's either practicing her one-man show or is massively theatrically insane just kind of comes and starts talking to you about the noises she hears and the way things are today, and You make a decision to quit that night. I believe I laundered my shirt and had you drive it back.
I seem to recall that, yes.
Yeah, it's it's not a great job. Not a great job.
But anyway, so that concludes this episode of Brokusatsu.
You can find us. You can send us an email. Please do. Send listeners, do whatever. To brokusatsu at gmail.com. We also have a Twitter that I am checking. Brokusatsu.
We also have a Facebook. Yes, Facebook page.
Yeah, you yelled it into reality. I consider just recording in. We don't have a Facebook page and inserting into the episode, but I broke.
Bah.
So yeah, Brokusatsu podcast community. I gotta add a description and like a cover and stuff, but whatever, it's there. Come and talk to us. And yeah, there's that. You can be a guest.
Sure, we'll make it happen.
Just come and talk to us, so we can keep talking to you about our next episode, which is V for Vendetta.
Really? It's straight V for Vendetta?
That's what it's called. Sam, do you remember the 5th of November?
Are they going to blow Parliament in this episode? That would totally be in line with their with the villain's policy of just tearing down the infrastructure of the city and the local government.
Well, we'll have to see now, won't we?